Alrighty, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, you guys are getting better at that. It takes practice. And also, happy Black History Month. And I'm just going to say something really briefly about Black History Month. So it's actually first started marinating in people's mind in the beginning around 1915, which actually was like a half a century after the 13th Amendment that abolished slavery in the U.S. And then it was a historian by the name of Carter G. Woodson and a minister by the name of Jesse E. Moreland who founded what they call the study of Negro life and history dedicated to researching and promoting achievements by Black Americans and other people of African descent. And today it's actually known as the Association of the Study of African Life and History. And in 1926, that's when they first did what they call the National Negro History Week. So it used to only been celebrated for a week, but then it wasn't until in 1976 where it's actually involved into Black History Month. And that's been happening ever since that's happening. So that's a little brief synopsis of Black History Month. So happy Black History Month, everyone. So when I actually take a moment and actually, think about, the whole idea that we actually is, honoring, Black History Month because it is February, it also actually makes me think that isn't it somewhat actually a shame that we actually have to celebrate a particular group? Mm-hmm. Is that because the fact that we don't acknowledge who they are, so we actually have to dedicate a whole month to them? You just made me think about what's that actually really, about, and what does that says a lot, about our society. And then I started thinking about it and reflecting more on it is, this is actually another opportunity that we actually are given to be able to begin to start healing our own minds regarding this. Starting to be able to heal our own relationships around it, and a way of where we could actually start healing the world, regarding that aspect of it. As we're aware in our society, there's always tons of challenges that continues to come up for us. And for me, it's no different. And one of the challenges that continues to come up for me is to continue to deal with racism here in our society, and that actually how that impacts me as a Black man in this society. And to understand the impact that it actually really has on my community and how it continues to have the impact regarding that. And as course students, it actually gives us an opportunity to be okay to have these discussions and not to strive away from it. Because a lot of times I think we're too afraid to bring it up because people are uncomfortable with it, or people are just like, no, I may say the wrong thing. But no, we are healers. And part of healers is being able to be okay to bring up these talks or discussions that may be a little uncomfortable for us. Because that's actually how we go ahead and strive and be who we are. It's always part of who I am. Race is always on my mind. It's just a natural thing. It's something that it continues to stick with me every day. But it's actually was heightened a little more lately because our job is requiring all of us to go through this racial humility training. It's a very 4-day intense training for 8 hours where we get the chance to actually process the whole thing regarding race. And it is called a racial humility training because it's not about looking at culture. We recognize that other issue comes up regarding gender, sexual orientation, economic, and classism. Very much aware of this. But this particular training really is about addressing the whole idea regarding race. And so that's what we're actually looking at. And because of that, it actually has opened my mind and given me more awareness that I never even thought possible. I thought I knew a lot about what was going on with race and how it impacts me, but this particular one is really challenging me to take a moment and to really look at my role in the whole aspect of racism, but also the role of others in this society as well. And it's actually also an opportunity for us to learn how recognizing the impact that it has and what it is that we can do to begin to heal this process. The Course tells us this: if you attack whom God would heal, and hate the one he loves, then you and your Creator have a different will. So if we attack whom God would heal and hate the ones he loves, then you and your Creator have a different will. God is not about hate. God is about love. There is a huge awareness that racism is very big in our country. And I know that people feel, some people, that it's not bad as it used to be, and that things are getting better. But actually, I challenge you to reflect and really see, is things really getting better? Or has things gotten worse? Or is it just because instead of things being more blatant about it, people actually are being more subtle about racism? It's important for us just to look at that and reflect and see what that's about. As a courage person, I'm aware that God loves all of us, all his children. He loves us each equally. But yet, the society that we live in doesn't see it that way. The society doesn't see us all as equal. And in order for us to be able to just slowly begin to scratch the surface of racism, we do need to take the time and look at our own part in it and look at how we can go about healing. And the thing that I'm going to focus on is about how we heal our minds regarding this. How do we heal the relationships regarding it? But also, more importantly, also, how do we heal the world? How do we actually go about looking at that? I recognize that there are so many aspects of racism that I can address, but since we're very limited in time, I have to narrow it down to a very specific thing. And I believe, as we address this, we will continue to evolve not only as individuals, as a community, as a group, as a world as a whole. And I recognize racism exists all and impacts so many different people. But the thing I'm going to focus more on is racism regarding relationship between whites and black, because that's the most prominent one here in this society. I recognize it impacts, Latinos, Asians. I totally understand that and recognize that. But from my experience and in this society, it has really, really been very prevalent, specifically among black and white. And since I'm black, that's my experience, so I'm going to talk from my experience. So that's the way I'm going to focus on. And when I look at it, there's two areas that I want to highlight. And one of those areas has to do with privilege and what privilege really means, specifically focusing on white privilege and what the impact that have on us in society. And the other part that I want to highlight and address is, as a black person, what is it about it that we stay stuck in being in our victimhood? What is it about it that makes it hard for us to express our own concerns and finding our own voices? As I mentioned, this racial humility training really has opened my eyes in a way that I never thought possible. And to be honest with you, it wrecked me the first day. It surprised me of how powerful and how impactful it has infected our society. The course reminds us of this. Yet, if you are his will, what you must then believe is that you are not yourself. Us having an awareness of who we are and how we are perceiving this world that we are in, having an understanding that it is our will and it is about us truly learning how to be ourselves. I want to be clear that when I talk about white privilege, when I start beginning to talk about white privilege, it is not about making anyone feel guilty. It's just more about having an awareness and understanding of the impact it is. I understand that there's privilege in all different forms. You know, there's privilege when it comes to gender. There's privilege when it comes to education. There's privilege when it comes to socioeconomic status. I get that, and I totally understand that. But there's also privilege regarding race, and something that we don't really, you know, address or really pay much attention to of what that's really is about. And the thing is, when you think about it, and when you look at privilege and what that is, and you know, I'm slowly starting to have conversations with, you know, friends regarding this aspect of it, which is not good sometimes, because it's very uncomfortable, it's fearful, and some people get defensive regarding the aspect of it, and that's not the intention. The intention is really just to have a honest, truthful dialogue of the impact of it. And so, if you are someone who is considered privileged, specifically, you know, white people consider privilege, these are the things just to, you know, keep in mind when you're thinking about privilege. You know, you are able to walk into a store and not have nothing to worry about. You are able to get pulled over by a cop and not worrying about, wait a minute, is that because I'm black? So that's privilege. Those are the things that's important just to keep in our mind and realize how that actually affects society as a whole. When you're able to get to the point to understand and recognize the privilege that you do have, that is when we slowly start to heal. We cannot heal when we are in denial. And in my opinion, I think our society is in denial. We are in denial of the impact of the pain, of the trauma that was given to us because of people's different race. And as spiritual leaders, as course students, we actually are in a good position to be able to give out the message of love, the message of healing, and being able to have these conversations in a way where it's coming from a loving and a healing place. It is as though you wandered in without a plan of any kind except to wander off, for only that seems certain. We all have a plan. The question is, are we putting those plans of action? And part of that plan in my mind is us healing all the wounds that exist. That's our plan. That's the plan of action that I think is important for us to start taking. One of the other things that came up for me in this training, which was very interesting, is he challenged us to look and see how often do we, as he used the word people of color, but I'm specifically speaking to black, how often we tend to protect our own white colleagues or our white friends or our white people. And how we go about doing it is, for instance, when the whole thing happened with blacks getting killed by police officers, and how we recognize how much that affects us, but yet a lot of us was too afraid to really have a conversation regarding the impact that had on us, because we were afraid of how our white friends would perceive us. We are afraid because they always say, yeah, it's always about race with you. Well, guess what? It is about race with us, because society makes it about race with us, and so we live it every single day. But we have a tendency of wanting to protect instead of really being true to ourselves. And those are the things that we need to become more aware of. And I was, shocked by that, when he mentioned that, because I was like, no, I don't do that. There's no way I'm pretty open, pretty vocal, say what I have to say. And it made me realize, no, I have more honest conversation regarding race with other black people than I do with my white friends. And that is something that we can't do. We need to be able to have this with everyone. And that's how we start the healing process. The other thing that came out of it, which is very interesting, is of how he said that instead of us saying white people, we always say to be dominant culture, because we're afraid to actually directly say what we mean. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't happen. Yeah, right. And then in our training, we were talking and I said something about the dominant culture and he was like, you mean white people, don't you? And I'm like, oh shit, yes. So it's embedded in our mind. It's just the way, you know, it is, and that's just the way how it is, you know, set up. But the thing is though, it's important for me and it's important for others as people of color, as, you know, someone who's black, is to be aware of our own stuff as well. That yes, we understand privilege exists, but yet as the course always reminds me, and which was very hard when I first started studying the course, is I am not a victim of this world. It does not mean that I cannot feel my experience and live it, but I also don't have to be a victim to it. That I can make the choice of figuring out what my part is, and my part is to be okay to speak my mind, to be not afraid to talk to my white colleagues or my white friends about race. If something happens to a black person getting killed, I should be okay to be say, you know what, yes, this fucking pisses me off. Instead of sugarcoating it because I'm afraid of how they're going to react. That's learning how to have an open and honest conversation, and actually when those moments happen, that is the best moment to start healing. And those are the moments that we just need to take a step back and look like, wait a minute, this is our opportunity. Let's heal right now. Let's heal our minds. Let's heal the relationship, what's happening between all of us. And by being able to do that, then guess what? We are starting to heal the world. And that's the beauty of it. You will perceive no difficulty in understanding what this vision tells you. For everyone see only what he thinks he is. We see a lot of times only what we want to see, instead of looking at the truth. And for me, I know that statement is true. Is it, I have my own mind of how I see things and how I, perceive things, and it's important for me to start looking at that. And one of the things that's important for me to look at is this, I guess I would say, well, pretty much since I've, come out, I've been in a interracial relationship. And in those interracial relationship, one of the things that I realize is a lot of times we don't talk about race. And how can you be in an interracial relationship and not talk about race when it's very clear that you're coming from two different backgrounds, but yet we don't, discuss it? But it's also important also for, at least in my case, for my white partner to understand what my experience is as a black person and not deny that. Because when we're denying it, then we're denying who that person really is. Example of that is with my first partner here in San Francisco, Danny, who passed away during the holiday season. It was this incident where we went out for dinner in San Francisco. It was one of those cold, rainy days here in San Francisco, and so it was late, and so we decided they wanted to take a cab back home. And so I told him that you need to actually flag down a cab. He's like, no, you go ahead and do it. I'm like, if I flag down a cab, there's just no way that we're going to be getting a cab. It's not going to happen. And he's like, yes, it will, because we're here in San Francisco. I'm like, yeah, no, we're not. And so he didn't believe me. I'm like, okay, fine. I would try to flag down a cab. And I remember several cabs just kept going back and just kept passing. And as I mentioned, it was freaking cold. And as people know me, I don't like being cold. It just does not work for me. Anything below 70, I am a wuss. So it was just crazy. And so then, and this also was way before Uber and Lyft even existed. So, and then finally, I just told him, you know what, you need to flag down a cab because, we're going to sit here and freeze if we don't get into a cab. And so he did. And the first cab stopped with him. And the thing is, he didn't have that awareness. In his mind, he felt like, of course, everyone's going to be treated equally because that's what he does. But that's not how the whole society sees it. So it's having that awareness of it. And also awareness for him of realizing, wow, I guess I do have privilege in certain ways that I didn't realize that you do, that you don't. So those are the things that, happens. And what your sight would show you, you will understand because it is the truth. So if we learn how to take a step back and just pay attention to what is happening, we actually understand what the truth really is. Another quick, example of when Reverend Peter and I first started going out, and then he actually, asked me to go back with him to the East Coast to visit his family, and he was up front and said that his family was racist. Oh. And so I'm like, okay, so you're bringing me to your family who don't like blacks. Lovely. But he was open and honest about it. So I'm like, okay, fine. And so then we went to the East Coast, and I, met his family, and particularly, his grandmother, who I was really, worried about, when I got there. But the thing is that once I got there, and once we start interacting with one another and see who each other, is, by the end of that visit, she asked me to call her grandma. And that's a healing moment. Because I allowed myself to be open, and she, I'm assuming at that time, allowed herself to be open. And that is how we start, healing the relationships that we are. But the most important thing is, Reverend Peter had the sight and awareness of what was going on and prepared me for it. Didn't let me go in there blind. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to just prepare ourselves and be aware of it. You are indeed correct in looking on each other as his chosen home. For here you will with him and with his Father. One of the things that I think is important for us and important for me to recognize, for us to get to the point where we all want to get, and that is healing our spirits in a way that we feel incredibly comfortable loving, is us learning how we have to heal our minds first. If we don't heal our minds first, we're just not going to get anywhere. If we don't heal our relationships between each other, we're not going to get anywhere. And we're definitely is not going to heal this world that we are in. And unfortunately for our society in this country, one of the biggest things that we continue to deal with, unfortunately, is racism. Just imagine if we were allowed to start truly healing that, what this makeup of this world will be. I know for me, as a black gay man, I would love to see that happen in our community. Because personally, it's one of the racist community to be involved with. Of how subtly racist it is in my own gay community. Even when they put it on apps of saying things like, no blacks, no Asian. It's like, do you have any idea of how offensive and how racist that is? But yet, the community is too afraid to have a dialogue about it. And we, and me as a black person, is too afraid to call them on it. And let them know that is not okay. When we get to the point where we're able to start having these conversations and being okay with it, that is when we're going to start healing. And also as a society as a whole, of how we treat different people and to treat different athletes. As you guys know, I'm a big sports fan. I love my sports. And just to see how the media destroyed Cam Newton because some of the things that he did, versus if Peyton Manning did something like that, it didn't matter because he's privileged and because he's white. Same thing in tennis with Serena Williams and Maria Sharapova. Serena's one of the most incredible athletes, but yet it's treated differently. These are the things that we need to start paying attention to and being more aware of. These little subtle things. Once we're able to get comfortable enough to have these conversations and talk about it, that is what's going to make us a better person. And that is what's going to help us to make things a lot more collective and a lot more healing in this world. It is time for us to take the time to heal our souls, heal our spirit, heal our minds, and heal our relationship. We can't wait anymore. It's time for us to do this now. I know personally I am ready to take this leap to heal my mind, heal my relationships, and heal this world. The question is, are you? And that's my talk.